Dr. Carlos Rivera, pediatrician, got divorced and ended up paying $15,000 a month to his ex. After paying $492,000 in 4 years, he still ended up having to go to jail for 6 months. Dr. Rivera has been forced into early retirement from his beloved profession due to finances and severe depression. He's been alienated from 2 of his children. He's been left with nothing. Yet, this isn't enough. His ex still wants him behind bars. Again, even his ex's boyfriend thinks this is wrong.
I actually believe fathers get fucked in court big time.
So how is this happening? How is the system allowing this to go on? In this Long Island Backstory special report, we'll investigate who is to blame for destroying a productive member of society just for getting a divorce.
Hi, I'm Gary Jacobs, and welcome to another edition of Long Island Backstory, where we film at the Cablevision Studios in Hauppauge, New York. Please remember to like us on Facebook, and if you like the show and want to help the cause, share it. This is our 4th show that we're doing with Dr. Carlos Rivera, a pediatrician from Suffolk County. He's been in the court system for years, and we've done a lot of shows. We've done 4 shows on him. We've gone to court and covered the case there because it's just such an incredible case. And just a quick recap in case people haven't seen any of his shows, you can go on YouTube and see them. But Dr. Rivera got divorced. He had 4 children, and he was basically ended up paying over $100,000 a year in child support. But paying that, he still fell behind because he was ordered to pay over 85% of his income, not being able to keep up, but again, still paying over $100,000 a year. His ex-wife, Catherine Cartwright, filed for contempt, and long story short, he ended up serving 6 months in jail in Suffolk County. Because of that, it went into a snowball effect where he lost his pediatrician practice, tried to start another one all over again, but the problem is his malpractice insurance was so high, number one. Number two, of course, having a reputation for being in jail for 6 months, pediatrician gets his new patients from referrals, and there's always sort of a black cloud in the medical industry hanging over his head. He lost his privileges in Stony Brook. So here we are today, and where we are today is that his ex-wife, once again, I think this is the 3rd or 4th time she's tried. Fourth petition to try to incarcerate Dr. Rivera again. This woman is hell-bent on destroying his life. She's actually done a pretty good job because she turned 2 of your 4 children against you. She alienated them, working on the others. Thank God that hasn't happened yet. This time, last time she was in family court, and we actually had a judge who was reasonable and told her, look, incarceration is off the table, and she's not going to incarcerate him. So she ended up withdrawing her petition. Now here we are about 6 months later. Now she goes to Supreme Court, where she files another petition, hoping to get a new judge. This time, in our opinion, the Chief Judge Hinrichs handpicked the judge, Judge Cheryl Joseph, and this woman is hell-bent on putting Dr. Rivera in jail. And I'm fearful that he's going to go back into jail again because from the way this woman acted in court last time, there's nothing anybody could say. This woman, her mind is made up. This judge is going to put him in jail, and that's where we are now. If you'd like to see the coverage of that case, you can go to the Facebook page or Google Dr. Rivera, Long Island Backstory, and you can watch it on TV. I think part of the other problem, and I'll stop speaking in a minute, is that the new boyfriend of Catherine Cartwright, his name is Sean, ex-police officer. But a lot of times the new boyfriend plays a big part in it because if they just say, hey, honey, move on with your life. The guy paid you, let him go on, let's be happy today, but he didn't. This new boyfriend, Sean Laird, ex-police officer, and when we ran the show about him last time, we asked him some difficult questions. He didn't want to speak. But after we ran the show, it is amazing how many people came forward. We had people coming to us telling us that, which always actually sounded fishy to me, that he was a policeman for 14 years and then left the force. And I said, wow, how could he do that? And then hearing some of the recordings that you had where he called you a pussy, he threatened to beat you up. I said, man, this is a police officer? It didn't sound right. But then people started sending us articles where he was arrested for domestic violence, had an order of protection, violated the order of protection, again,
as a police officer.
And that somehow, whether they let him resign or forced him to resign, that we can't figure out. Number 2, money.
Money is the root of all evil, right? So we look at the money, and now I find out that Sean Laird owes tens of thousands of dollars in credit card debt, has unpaid red light camera tickets or parking tickets, but the man is severely in debt. He's looking at you as his meal ticket, Carlos. That's a problem. So that's where we are today. So let's just take off from there. Where are we now with court?
Well, I go back on the 13th. I want to say thank you for covering the story. It's been a tremendous help to me, and I appreciate that. I go back on Wednesday the 13th next week in Supreme Court in front of Judge Cheryl Joseph. As you mentioned before, it's my ex's fourth petition to have me incarcerated, and there's no logic to incarcerating somebody for debt, because what happens in my case is my career was destroyed. When I came back, like you said, I was blackballed. My privileges weren't officially denied. They were just slow to negotiate with me to have them reinstated. And other pediatricians, I was hired by somebody, Dr. Audrey Chongale, who was nice enough, and I'm very grateful to her to ignore the rumors and the slander, and to give me an opportunity to come back to the very practice that I had lost, which was wonderful, to return to the patients that I knew and loved. But she was told by several people, like, he's a great doctor, a nice guy, I would stay away from him, there's just too much negative publicity. And to be a pediatrician who went to jail for child support, those two things don't go together. Right. So it was only by the grace that my relationship with my patients is so good, and they care for me so much, that I was able to get back. But what had happened was that my malpractice premiums they more than tripled, because what happened was, since I went into bankruptcy prior to becoming incarcerated, then I spent 6 months in jail. Then there was a time lag for me to get another policy. What happened was, for a period of time that would have cost me $15,000 prior to incarceration, because I had that gap uncovered, my malpractice premium went from $15,000 to $47,000, and that's for part-time work. So it became increasingly more difficult. So this isn't that I had malpractice suits against me. This is strictly because of the amount of time that I was incarcerated and was bankrupt trying to pay my ex. And one of the things I had wrote about prior to incarceration was that I was found in contempt in the court, but I was operating without malpractice insurance, not because it was a wise decision. It was because I had two choices at the time, as to, one, not work and not provide child support, or work without malpractice insurance, which is legal in New York State, and take that risk so I could pay my obligation and make every attempt to pay so. Even though I was paying her money, she still won and was given everything that she asked for in my downward modification. She was granted everything that she claimed, which were ridiculous claims, were all false. And now, I'm found in contempt. It's like, I'm found in contempt after paying close to $500,000 in 4 years for child support. What I signed for under duress after a nervous breakdown calculates out to more than 400% over what I was legally obligated to pay. Yet I'm still found in contempt, and yet my life is still, I have jail riding over me for the rest of my life.
And I think, there's a couple of things I think we should, that need to be said. You're in front of the judge right now. To me, this should just be dismissed, because when you read the rules of the court, they say the number one important thing is the best interest of the child. Let me just tell you, as far as Judge Joseph's concerned, is bullshit. She doesn't listen to it. Because if it was in the best interest of the child, what this judge would do is say, you know what, Mrs. Cartwright, I am not putting him in jail because it's not in the best interest of the two children that you haven't successfully alienated against him yet. How is that in the best interest of the children? Forget about money. It's putting money over children. And then there's a whole issue of debtor's prison, of course, that the fact that you never should have been able to sign this agreement because you were under duress. You had a breakdown. We don't have to go into the details now, but you were clearly under duress. You were on a medication that wouldn't allow you to make.
I was just discharged from an admission.
Right. You just left a psych ward, I guess. Admission.
Yeah,
so, but it is what it is, and you came out and signed it. So it's ridiculous that anybody, and even your lawyer made you sign a paper that says they're recommending that you don't sign the agreement. But you still did it. So it just shows that it doesn't make sense. The other thing I think we have to talk about is that the courts are creating this situation. This is sort of like what I call a self-directed verdict. They set you up with all these problems. Now you're the bad guy. You weren't the bad guy. You were just working and trying to pay your child support.
And I think what happened was because of my profession, they were looking to make an example. I'm convinced of that they were looking to make an example and hit the doctor hard. But when you look at what happened, like I submitted all this as evidence, and it amazes me that no one actually reads it. And I had an attorney, Patrick Kerr, who did not present this in my case, and I even went to his associates and I'm not comfortable with him in my trial. This isn't going well, and I was reassured that things would be fine. So I have attorneys in there that I'm asking them to represent me properly, and they weren't. And then that information was presented to a magistrate who then overlooks it and then gives her ruling to the judge who rubber stamps it. Right. So my case, I went from not wanting to talk about it because it's humiliating, but the truth is people need to see what happens in the system.
Also, the jail changed you.
Well, yeah, jail was quite...
I mean, as I said one night, you said you were sleeping on someone's couch, and I said, what are you doing? You're a doctor, sleep... And and I think you said to me, Gary, I slept in a freaking jail, for 6 months and ate garbage. It's totally sucked in and had to go to the bathroom with everybody standing around watching me. I've lost all my humanity, or whatever the word you use, so I think it's changed.
You lose a lot. I'm actually surprised that I didn't walk out of there with hepatitis or some other disease, because that's a story in and of itself.
But another thing, I think before we go forward, and I want to mention this because there was a lot of your shows are on Facebook and you're public on Facebook. One of the things that came up was somebody had mentioned, well, I don't feel sorry for him because why didn't he just go to court and ask the judge to lower his child support? So I just want to address that, because if this one woman mentioned this on Facebook, there are probably other people who don't understand the system. And I guess it does sound right. Why wouldn't he just go to court and say, hey, Your Honor, I can't afford this. I'm paying $100,000, but I can't afford $140,000. Address that.
It's interesting because a lot of people told me, I get comments, you get criticisms, and some of them are constructive and helping, some of them are just outright, I have no idea what's going through their mind. But stop being a whiner or get over it. It's like, I would love to get over it. I would love to be able to have an opportunity to move on with my life quietly. But the truth is, this has ensnared me and it's pulled me into this system that I can't get out of. And every attempt to make an honest living or to get out of this and move on fairly, it's destroyed. So I speak about this because I'm not the only person. My story gets a lot of attention because of the numbers.
And because you're a doctor.
Because I'm a doctor. So it's good for gossip. But the truth is, the numbers are relative. And while my numbers are astronomical, if you take somebody who's making $40,000 a year and then give them a child support settlement that's untenable for them, they can't make it, it's the same story. It's just got different numbers. And this is what people need to be aware of, is that the system is designed to make money. It's designed to take advantage of you and put you in a situation where you can't pay, and then they're making money on interest and Title 4D money on you.
Which is another whole show in itself, but the bottom line is there is an incentive for them to try to extract more money from you. It's not just like, hey, screw Dr. Rivera. That there is part of the issue of the judge, when there's a doctor or a policeman, that they feel like they're going to show that they're better than them. I think there is something there, but the bottom line is to go where the money is.
Pretty much, and it makes, if you look at the way the system works for them, it makes perfect sense to take a person like me and put me into debt that I can't get out of. I just received a child support bill today. My child support goes up. Child support alone for 4 children, I'm being charged $13,500 per month for 4 children in child support alone. That does not include maintenance, does not include all the other things that I'm responsible to pay for, mortgage, my ex's car, her fuel, utility bills, all those other things. I haven't been able to pay those in years now. Child support alone, $13,500 at 9% interest, and I currently have over $500,000 worth of child support.
Accruing at what percent interest?
It's accruing at 9%. I'll never get out of this. If I could spend over 30 years, if every penny of my salary prior to my forced retirement was being put into the system, it was going to take me close to 30 years to pay that off.
So it's just not common. I mean, when they talk about the best interest of justice, this is totally it's unfair, and it's setting you up to go back to jail again, to make you not be able to work again. The psychological having this let me tell you, if nobody's having jail hanging over your head, it's a huge psychological, mental toll on you. I mean, the best of strongest of persons would at the least be depressed. But how do you focus on work and a career like yours, where you could be putting somebody's life at, like I sell dog toys. Not going to hurt somebody if I sell them the wrong squeaky toy, but you could hurt somebody. Somebody can die if you do it.
It became increasingly difficult to perform my job, and I'm fortunate to have families that you have a close relationship with, and they trust me with their children. I love them, but the pressure continually, steadily intensified, and that I became very, very nervous of my, should I continue doing this? Because I have an obligation to pay. And if I don't pay, well, why? He's like, well, if I continue to work as a pediatrician under duress and I make the wrong decision, I'll be asked in that case, and it'll be the right question, why did you continue under duress if you knew that this was going to put people at risk?
Right.
So my choices are to continue under duress and put them at risk, or to retire, because I cannot continue with the type of stress that I'm being put under. My ex, the only thing that she's motivated in doing is pursuing me and making my life miserable. And I was recently asked by a family member the other day, does she have a life insurance policy out on you? Because it's almost like she's trying to intentionally kill you.
Right.
And
or have you kill you, drive you to kill yourself.
I guess maybe there's some kind of benefit to that I'm not aware of. But these are the things, and I used to wish that she would run out of steam, but the truth is she's not. She continues to be supported by family and friends who encourage this type of behavior.
Let me just ask this, because I often look at these cases and I say, you know what? These people have a family. They all knew you before. In fact, I mean, you cared for a lot of them. They called you for medical advice when they needed a question. So they obviously trusted you with important things. Where are her siblings? Don't they come to her and say, hey, Catherine, stop it already. The guy was a great father. He loves his children. Let him practice. Where are they? How does this fit in? Where are the siblings?
I did reach out to the siblings on one occasion, and I was told to not contact that person ever again. And then my ex has a sister who continues to criticize me on social media.
For what?
That I'm disillusioned, that I'm a liar, I'm a fraud.
Well, let's just, anybody who's out there, and I've said this before, and just so everybody knows, I reached out to Sean Laird, the new boyfriend. I asked him to comment on his order of protection. I asked him to comment on why he's no longer on the police force. We looked up, I think he's had 5 jobs, I believe, since the police force. He's lost a lot of jobs. Why did that? There's a lot of things, again, the domestic violence issues, all the money that's owed, and he didn't comment and told me not to contact him anymore, which is interesting because I keep getting messages on Facebook that Sean Laird on Facebook sends people messages, not publicly, he sends them through Facebook Messenger and says, don't believe everything you read, don't believe everything you hear. You know what, be a man, Sean. Be a man. You're prosecuting this guy. Come out like you're doing. Come out on TV. Come out, if you don't like my show, come out on one of the other people's shows covering it and say that it's a lie.
It's interesting. My experience with him and my ex is it's a Trojan horse. I've been approached by them on several different occasions under the guise of peace, and it's a Trojan horse where they're hiding weapons or they're hiding an attack plan. Sean has quite a bit to say to me. He threatens me at my daughter's functions. I went to a school function for my daughter, and he cornered me in the hallway and was insisting on a fist fight. And that carried through the hallways with a verbal exchange. And every time I go to pick up my children, he's there. And
you know what? You could have very easily, because you have a lot of these things recorded, you could have gone to the police, and we've discussed it. And I asked Dr. Rivera, why don't you go to the police like they did and have this asshole arrested? Get him put in jail. Let him see what it's like. And your answer was, you know what, he's wrapped up in my ex-wife, and just because they did the wrong thing, I'm not going to do the wrong thing. But you know damn well you had the recording. You could have had this man's ass thrown in jail. He could lose his 5th job. Let him see, but you didn't do it because you're a good person. And I still say go ahead and do it. You keep telling me you don't want to do it, fight fire, but listen, you have, like you said, you have to live with yourself.
It's interesting because I literally have to turn my shoulder because they show up from any which direction. The last time, it was actually kind of funny in that I pulled up behind his car, which is a convertible, and the top's down, and I pull up with my children, and up pops my ex-wife from the car, and he pops out of some other car from someplace, and she blocks me from exiting, and then he gets the paperwork from her and serves me paperwork for my fourth
in front of the kids.
Oh, my kids were right there,
right.
And they don't seem to care, and it's interesting.
Unfortunately, they're probably numb to the situation.
They were confused. They were confused, and the gender bias in court kills me because I think if I had pulled a stunt like that, the circumstances would be, the result would be a lot different.
Absolutely.
But, as we were mentioning before, he continues to threaten me. I have him on audio tape. I'm trying to reason with him, and he's stepping on my feet, in my face, nose to nose, telling me to be a man and let's go someplace and throw some fists. And this is in view of my children. And this is what I have to deal with. And this is another reason I fight against parental alienation, because my children are subjected to this now. Like I can't see my kids. This person's being portrayed as a hero and the replacement for their deadbeat
I think
dad.
he once made a comment that he's supporting your children. How is the man? The man's in major debt. He doesn't pay a damn bill. He owes all this money. How is he supporting the children?
He has a lot of flavorful descriptions for me, calling me a piece of shit. I don't take care of my kids. That I put this cause before my kids. And I said, and no one can argue. You come up with $13,500 a month in child support, and then let's talk about.
Right. In fact, I heard the tape where he even said, we played it on the last show, where he says, "Look, I know you were screwed."
Yeah, he
so if you know he's screwed, what kind of human being is doing
this? And that's what bothers me about him.
How does Catherine sleep with this man? How does she look at him in the eyes when he's saying, "I agree with Carlos, he was screwed"? What kind of person is she?
Sometimes I try to wonder if he's trying to walk a road between the obvious and maintaining his relationship with her, or I wonder if they're two peas in a pod, to be honest with you, because I would never be able to intentionally hurt someone if I made a mistake and hurt someone, that's one thing, and I have been, I'm guilty of that, but I have never in my life sustained some type of animosity towards some person or purposely harm them in the way that they have. And my case exemplifies, it's just one of many, how malicious someone could be and how misguided. And what kills me is the bystander effect. There's something that's well written in psychology today, where there's a bystander effect where people ignore this behavior and they allow it to perpetuate. And in essence, they
condone
promote it.
Right. I believe the judge, and that's why he said, you know what, this Judge Joseph, the right thing for her to do would be to come in and say, you guys work this out, pay a reasonable amount, get his job. I'm not putting the man in jail. Instead, she came in there and victimized you again. You're the victim. Let's not forget where this whole thing started. You're not a criminal. You didn't beat anybody up. You got divorced. You made some mistakes. You've publicly admitted that. We don't have to rehash it. But so did Catherine. Sure. She's not pure either. You both made mistakes. But okay, you've moved on.
Yeah, the hard part is, if you take that away. And just looking at the merits of it, the initial stipulation of divorce written by Beth Rosenthal, it is horrible that I've had numerous attorneys look at it after and say, was an attorney present when you signed this? Right. And I said, my attorney wrote this, and they look at me in a shocked disbelief. So I was actually, in that stipulation, there's not an official court order. So when I was incarcerated, my rights, my constitutional rights were stripped all along the way. But the worst one was
the judge never had jurisdiction over you because it wasn't a court order. But now everybody's covering up their mistakes and feeding it. This is many happen.
And if you look at any other industry, you're covering up mistakes is one of the worst things you can do, and you can't do it. In medicine, if you make a mistake, you have to correct it. You have to own up to that and the consequences that go with making that poor decision. Any type of job, engineering, whatever, there's other consequences if you make a bad decision. If you make a bad decision in law, you have to pay for it to be corrected, and they can cover it up. My case would have been over had someone just said, "Listen, there's problems from the get-go. Let's fix this.
Stop it. Say enough is enough already. The man's paying you $100,000 a year. Let's bring it down where he can survive."
It was well more than that.
And let me tell you, if the judge would have done that 4 years ago, 3 years ago,
so
whatever it was, said, "Look, Mrs. Cartwright, first of all, get a goddamn job. Start supporting yourself. Let your new boyfriend, Sean Laird, whatever job number he's on, let him chip in. He says he likes to support. He's supporting them. Let him chip in. Believe me, they can live on your $100,000 because the interesting thing is now they're on public assistance, right? So they're not getting anywhere near $100,000 a year. They're probably getting $10,000 a year.
No one's making money anymore.
Right. The gravy train's over, but they're still going.
And when it's a pathogen that took out the host. And I told her a while ago in a heated exchange that a good parasite doesn't kill the host.
It's killing the golden goose.
And this is the case, and that she was so vindictive, and she took out her income. And this is what troubles me, is that she was encouraged to do this by family and friends. And
the judge. Don't leave the judge out.
Well, I do realize
because they could have stopped it.
They could have, and this whole process. And this isn't me speaking out. Isn't about a woe is me. I'm a grain of sand on the beach. There are countless stories like me. The numbers are different, and that's the only thing that makes us different is the numbers involved. But the judiciary has a responsibility to do the right thing, to review these things and say, this is absurd. There's no logic to this whatsoever. Let's take this apart. Let's put it back together and make some reasonable sense. I never had a problem with paying a lion's share of my income for my children. I love my children. My activities to raise awareness are for my 2 children that are alienated from me and the 2 children that still talk to me. We need to fix this system, not for me, for everybody involved, because it's killing people.
Let's talk about that because we only have a few minutes left. You've become an outspoken advocate. I don't know how you think that's hurt your case, or I guess it couldn't get any worse. You went to jail before this, and your 2 children were alienated against you. But let's talk about what you're doing. You have a radio show and on WLINY that people can get on the internet anywhere in the world. And I know the last time I checked when you were doing one of the shootings, there was over 6,000 people watching it. You know, on the various, what are the things? Hulu,
the different apps,
the different app, Hulu, yeah, exactly. And over 6,000 people across the world watching. Talk about that in the last few minutes, what you're doing there and how people can follow you.
Thank you, Gary. One of the things that I try to point out to people is that I believed in the system the way I was raised, and believed in our government, believed in following the rules, obeying authority. So I'm not the type of person who get some kind of joy against bucking the system. I don't. I believed in the system, and the system failed me and millions like me miserably. And for that case, if you're you have to stand up for what's right and what's true. And if you're the only one, then you're the only one. But somebody's got to stand up for it, and it comes at a high price. I think that by speaking out, it definitely ruffled the feathers of my first judges, Barbara Lenore and Martha Luft. But you have to stand for what's true, and if the mainstream media won't listen to us, then it's social media and shows like yourself by pioneers that are willing to talk out loud about the system against things that people won't speak out about. And through my inspiration, through you, I somehow managed to walk into a door that opened at the right time with WLINY, and that they gave me the opportunity to speak out on this topic on an internet radio blog station. And through that, I've made some friends. So I fight for people that alienated parents, for people that have been wronged by the system. I call out for just reform in the legal system. I'm not going to stop divorce. What I'm looking to do is make these judgments fair and make it possible for people to live independent lives where they can pursue happiness, not live in misery. So I'm doing that through several different venues. I have the WLINY.com. I have a Facebook site, Dr. Carlos Rivera March for Awareness, which is a nonprofit site, which I look for donations to fight. But one of the biggest projects I'm working on to date is I plan on walking from New York to Los Angeles, California with Patrick Glynn of Walk for Lost Kids, and walk 15 miles a day, have someone host me overnight where they could tell their story of how they were affected by the court system, how life is now in misery, or they're missing their children. So it's going to be basically a video journey of this, and to continue our fight for awareness. It's an election year, and I'm looking for politicians to make a change. They have to stop ignoring us, and they have to start making legislation to correct this system that's just woefully inadequate.
Right, thanks. Just in closing, I need to thank the attorney Judith Powell of Jericho, who's the only one who's really had the courage to go out there. She filed a malpractice suit against Dr. Rivera's previous attorneys. Very difficult to find somebody to do here on Long Island, going against one of their own. She speaks out against the judge, even though she's been abused. Thank you to Frank Vetro at WLINY, your producer, Eric Kopelman, for giving you this voice, because look, you don't have a lot of money, any money, so they've really given you an opportunity to get a voice. It's helping them, but it's really helping you too. And Catherine Cartwright, you're listening? Stop being a piece of shit and do the right thing. Be a good mother. He won't say it, I'm saying it. Be a good mother. You're destroying your children's lives. You've turned 2 kids against this man already. You're working on the others. You're not doing any good. Do the right thing. Nobody watching this should believe that this is just the courts. These petitions were filed by Catherine Cartwright. If you know her, get on the phone and tell her to stop it. Let this man go on with his life. Let him go back and get his life together and be a pediatrician. Do what he loves. Sean Laird, what kind of man are you? That you threaten this man? It's disgusting what you're doing. There's a lot of stories about you. You know it. Stop what you're doing. Settle. For anybody who watches, I know somebody told Dr. Rivera last week, why don't you just try to mediate? I'm telling everybody here today, Dr. Rivera's lawyer, Judy Powell, tried to mediate, and his wife, Catherine Cartwright, said no. Her quote was, I quote, "I never lose." Well, she's lost twice so far. You're going to lose again. Give it up already. Start doing the right thing. Be a mother and be a human being. I'm Gary Jacobs. Thank you for joining us at Long Island Backstory.